Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek here. Guys, we are only a few hours away from the Stephon Gilmore signing to the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts get the former All-Pro, former Defensive Player of the Year on a 2-year deal, $23 million, $14 million of that guaranteed. And guys, we've already talked about it. We went live a little bit ago, kind of talking about how massive this signing is for the Colts, for their defense, for what they want to do. I think by far, Derek, the best player or one of the best players on the market here, especially on the defensive side of things. So, first off, initial reactions. I know we had, we kind of talked about it a little bit, our initial gut reactions right when the news broke on the stream. But now that we've had a few minutes here to kind of collect ourselves and think about it, what is your overall thoughts on this signing?
Well, I mean, it was very obvious that the Colts really wanted him. I mean, we talked about it a little bit in the stream that, them sending the jet, everybody talking about how Stefan had a really good visit and, both sides were mutually really interested in each other. Stuff like that normally comes out when there's actual extended talks about really trying to get a deal done. So, I mean, it seemed very obvious that the Colts really wanted to bring Stephon Gilmore in. And I mean, my initial reaction, I mean, we said it in the live stream. I was literally just laying in bed, about ready to get the day started. And then that just woke me up like instantly. I was very excited. I'm happy about it. I really love that we got another veteran corner in here that, can play some really good football still. I'm very happy with this move, and I'm very interested to see what it does for this defense.
Absolutely. And I think it's clear, like Rocky Sin was good last year, but Stephon Gilmore, when he's healthy, is one of the top cornerbacks in the league. So
Right.
you can say that the Colts did upgrade from where they were last year at cornerback at this point, which is obviously huge, while also getting better at pass rush as well and getting better at depth at safety as well. So they've done a few moves on defense that I think have really started to, push the needle, especially Derek with the teams you're going to be playing. You're playing the AFC West this year. You have to win your division. You haven't won it since, Chris Ballard and Frank Reich have been in town. You have not won the division. So, you have to stop some of these good passing attacks that you're going to be facing here soon. But I wanted to kind of talk about that and kind of talk about, okay, now that the Colts have officially signed Stephon Gilmore to 2 years, what does he mean for this defense? Where does this defense currently stand right now with this Stephon Gilmore signing? What's your opinion on this defense now, adding a player of Stephon Gilmore's caliber?
Well, I mean, when you sign a guy like a Stephon Gilmore, I mean, the Colts have made it very adamant. They view him as a number one corner. They still do. And I'm sure that he was not, they were not the only team. I think there were about 6 other teams that offered Stephon Gilmore a decent contract. So, it goes to show you a good chunk of the league really thought that Stephon Gilmore was still a pretty good cornerback that could play some good football. So, at the end of the day, he is going to be your number one corner. And that's what the Colts needed now that, they traded away Rock Yassin. You have that solidified number one outside corner now. And then with all the other moves that Ballard has made over this offseason, you now have Yannick Ngakoue on the defensive line. That's going to help them out a little bit. Linebacker depth and everything else for the linebackers, we already know what's up with them. And you signed Rodney McLeod the week prior. So, you bring in another great piece that may either start or plays a starting role in a certain scheme. I don't know how that's going to all work out. Some people view Rodney McLeod as a starter. Some people view him as a backup. I'm not sure which it'll be. But nevertheless, he's going to get playing time. And then you bring in a guy like Stephon Gilmore, again, despite the age and despite, a few injury concerns over the last few years, that when he's on the field, he plays really, really well. So you don't have to worry about that. You bring in a guy that's very smart. He's a guy that's going to, bring that experience to that side of the football field again, help with the defensive scheming, and especially just due to the fact that he is Stephon Gilmore. We mentioned it a few times over the last few days talking about it. The name Stephon Gilmore is enough to get offensive coordinators to say, maybe we should reprogrammed to not throw the football in the direction of a Stephon Gilmore, right? Because of how smart he is and knows how to play on the ball, right? So that's a great thing because now you have that slight fear from the offensive coordinator and the players on the offensive side of the football to throw it in that direction just a little bit. And that helps when you're a defense like Indianapolis who thrives off creating turnovers. That little indecisiveness could also help the pass rush as well. I mean, it's one of those things that it helps in a lot of ways. It won't, I don't know if it'll transcend the defense. That'll be yet to determine, but I do know it definitely improves this defense in every facet now because you have somebody like a Stephon Gilmore.
And Stephon Gilmore I think he's going to fit seamlessly in this defense because he's a turnover machine as well, right? He's a guy that likes to force a lot of turnovers. You mentioned that's kind of been the Colts' bread and butter the last couple seasons, especially last year. They had the goal of 50 turnovers and they almost got there, right? So, I mean, this is a defense that, obviously they change coordinators and all that stuff, but the principles of turning the ball over, that's ingrained in some of these guys' minds now. And that's a big thing about Gus Bradley too, is he wants that. But also one thing was the pass rush, right? How much is that pass rush now? We all know with Gus Bradley, it seems like every year he's been a coordinator, usually his teams typically are pretty good at getting after the quarterback. And they add a guy the caliber of Yannick Ngakoue out there. And now it's like, okay, could that even help Stephon Gilmore a little bit more? The fact that he's not going to have to cover as long as maybe he would have if he was in, say, a Matt Eberflus scheme last year with the pass rush. They had a lack of pass rush, more appropriate there. But, is it going to help him out in that way to know he's probably going to have a pretty good pass rush altogether when it's all said and done?
Yeah, and then when you look at just what the Colts had to do to get Stephon Gilmore, I mean, with the contract that they signed, 2 years, we kind of figured that was the deal that was going to go down, right? And because the Colts view him as a still high level corner, he would get that 2-year option, $23 million, $14 million of that guaranteed. I kind of figured that the guaranteed money was probably going to be what concerned Stephon Gilmore the most. And that was probably what ultimately got him to come to Indianapolis because Indianapolis was willing to give a little bit more guaranteed money than some of these other teams in that contract. But again, you're getting a guy that for under $12 million a year, a guy that is still one of the better shutdown corners in the league, despite his age and everything else. That's a really good deal in my opinion. I haven't really seen anybody say that it's a bad deal. At the end of the day, they really did a phenomenal job, and I'm so glad that Ballard got it done. I've been saying it for all off season that if there's one corner on the free agent market that I would have loved to see in an Indianapolis Colts uniform, that was Stephon Gilmore. So I'm very happy about it.
Now, how much do you think on and off the field Stephon Gilmore is going to help some of these young corners the Colts have, right? Like the Kenny Moores, like the Isaiah Rodgers, if they draft another guy, how valuable do you think it's going to be to have a guy of Stephon Gilmore's caliber who has been there and done that, has been, defensive player of the year, has been to Super Bowls, has, really been one of the most dominant corners in the league, and you mentioned one of the smartest corners in the league as well. How much do you think that's going to help those young guys?
Well, I mean, we kind of said the same thing about Xavier Rhodes when he signed just a few short years ago. I mean, this guy was, an all-pro at 1.2. And, he plays a lot like a Stephon Gilmore, aggressive, likes to, get physical up along the lines. You're not going to get an easy route when you're facing guys like Xavier Rhodes and Stephon Gilmore. And that was the thing. But the only difference is Stephon Gilmore himself has something that Xavier Rhodes doesn't quite have, and that's the experience in getting to championships, experience of, understanding different schemes a lot more than what Xavier Rhodes does. Not throwing any shade at Xavier Rhodes. Xavier Rhodes has been a phenomenal player. I'm just saying Stephon's experience alone separates him just a little bit more than it does for Xavier Rhodes. And again, he might have a few more tricks up his sleeve and how he plays that could help some of these corners. especially for a guy like Isaiah Rodgers, who needs to learn to be that more physical corner at the line of scrimmage, because Isaiah Rodgers is kind of small compared to, most guys he's going to be going up against. Can't just rely on his speed all the time. You have to learn to be able to go against guys right up there in the front. And I don't remember who it was that, I think it was Michael that mentioned it on the stream last night, said that they interviewed Stephon Gilmore, and he says that anytime a receiver goes past 10 yards on me, I know where they're going. I know where they're going because there's only so many ways, only so many places you can go after going 10 yards. You can either go on a streak, you can cut back in, or you can go to the sideline. You're never coming back. So it's one of those things where it's like that kind of mindset that could really help with a guy like Kenny Moore too, who, getting to learn how a guy like Stephon Gilmore plays the game, that could really be helpful in deciphering routes and everything else as well. So, again, not just the potential, but, being able to dissect one of the smartest cornerback minds in the game at all levels is going to help this secondary get even better. I mean, we saw it in 2020, Xavier Rhodes comes around, the secondary got a little better. Obviously, the pass rush wasn't quite there. 2021, Xavier Rhodes still there. The secondary got even better. And, helping these guys with even more experience like that, Rodney McLeod, Stephon Gilmore being added, so much championship experience in that locker room now. And these young guys are really going to thrive off that knowledge. I'm loving it, man. I'm loving it. And, the relationships that these guys can have, being mentors with these young players, their knowledge and experience can help this secondary so much more than just these year or two that they're here with us.
And how about just a mindset change too? I mean, we saw, Derek, it's been well documented at this point, how the Colts defense especially, they just kind of collapsed in the last two games, right? They got beat by the Raiders. They got shredded by the Raiders. Let's be honest. They got beat by the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence was virtually perfect on his first drive. He looked like the number one overall pick that everybody was expecting coming out of Clemson. Yep. And it just seemed like there was a lack of accountability from everything, from all the comments from Irsay, from Ballard, from even players. It seems like there was just a lack of accountability there. And one thing the Colts have done is they've gotten guys who, number one, you mentioned it, have been to the championship games. Rodney McLeod, Super Bowl champion. Stephon Gilmore's been to the big game. I think he's been a champion as well. They add guys like Matt Ryan, who's been there as well. They are bound and determined, Derek, to not let that happen again. Because, yes. I mean, honestly, they talk all the time about how much they value the locker room and all those things. Well, the locker room let you down last year.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It let you down. Guys were not holding other guys accountable. I mean, DeForest Buckner said it. I didn't watch the last episode of Hard Knocks, but I saw like a clip from it where DeForest Buckner basically said, we crapped the bed.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah,
and they did.
Even some of the veteran guys that they had, didn't quite have the experience that these guys they now added are going to add, because guys like DeForest Buckner and Xavier Rhodes and some of these other guys, they're veterans, but they don't have what is necessary to show you the Super Bowl mindset. DeForest Buckner did have that, but some of these other guys that you brought in just haven't quite been those multi-champ guys, been there, done that so many times. And DeForest Buckner was still a young player at the time. So, it's one of those things where you're bringing in a guy like Matt Ryan with 13 years of experience. And the same thing with Stephon Gilmore, 10 years of experience, Rodney McLeod, 9 years of experience, but guys who have been to the big dance, who are going to hold each other accountable. You're right. You talked about the locker room. Everybody loves the Colts locker room. We all know that these guys are a tight-knit group. Of course they are. No, nothing wrong with that. It's just, you're right. Darius Leonard tried to get that message across that we need to step up, but obviously it just wasn't enough. And now you have guys like Stephon Gilmore and Rodney McLeod and Matt Ryan who are going to demand the attention and the respect and the effort from these guys. They're going to get it out of them, because if they don't, then they're going to call them out on their BS. We know it now. And that's why these high character, high experience guys are signing here in Indianapolis, because I think that was Ballard's initiative. Go and sign guys that have that experience.
Yep. And Ballard has said himself multiple times, he says the locker room leads it, right? The locker room leads where we're going to go. And last year, unfortunately, the locker room led to you collapsing down the stretch. I mean, that's just reality. And so the Colts were like, that's not going to happen again. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen again. And it certainly seems like, at least on paper, again, when the rubber meets the road, what happens, we'll see. But the Colts seem like they have just made it a mission this offseason to get some guys that will call out guys, will hold people accountable. And that's just something that iron sharpens iron, right? It's only going to benefit this team and this locker room moving forward. And that's what the team needed. That's what they lacked last year. So yeah, when it comes to the Stephon Gilmore signing, now you have two vets in that secondary, something you didn't have a year ago.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, you didn't. Like,
yeah,
you had Andrew Sendejo, and who else did you have? Xavier Rhodes,
I guess. Sendejo's
but
experience in this league is nowhere near that of a Rodney McLeod or Stephon Gilmore.
Right. It's just because you're in the league doesn't mean you're any good.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, you get these two guys in here. I mean, I think anybody would sign up for a Stephon Gilmore, Rodney McLeod versus a Xavier Rhodes and a Andrew Sendejo led secondary. So
exactly right. Now we do wonder what that'll do for Xavier Rhodes. Don't know if that means he is, going to be gone. I'm sure the Colts would love to have him back, but maybe he thinks he can get another contract worth a few million somewhere else. I don't know, but we obviously now know who the number one outside corner is. We now know who it is. That issue has now been addressed. Ballard made that an issue when he traded for Yannick, but he righted the wrong and now he figures it out. And now we have two veteran guys at very key positions on this defense now. So, I mean, this defense is about to be rocking this year for sure.
Yeah. And kind of going back to our argument of pass rush versus corners, you can find a corner that's a really good corner in free agency, whereas pass rush, it's a lot harder to do so. It's extremely harder to do so. So, yeah, I mean, I think, Chris Ballard created a hole, but he knew that there was going to be some solutions out there in guys like Stephon Gilmore, Steven Nelson, even, I know the Colts had their lines in the water for like James Bradbury, for example. So there were still some options out there in free agency. So I think you look at it from that perspective and you think, man, you've hit a home run so far on the defensive side this year.
Oh, yeah.
Improving, two weaknesses this year has been huge for this team, and adding another depth guy in Rodney McLeod as well. I mean, your defense is sitting so much better than it was a couple months ago. So, yeah, I think the Stephon Gilmore signing, if he can stay healthy, this will just take this defense to another level, specifically the cornerbacks. It's going to help everybody out, and I'm really excited to see this group in action, man.
Oh, yeah, same here. And, he gets to play in a dome for the first time in his professional career as a home stadium, and gets to spend the majority of his season inside a dome. I don't know if that matters much to him at all. I mean, he's spent the first 8 years of his career playing in cold places. So, maybe he'll enjoy, being in a dome for the majority of the year where doesn't have to worry about that.
Yeah. And the good thing is, when you have to go, if you make the playoffs, you have to go like to a Buffalo or to a New England or to one of those cold places. Stephon Gilmore's been there for years.
Yeah, he understands it. Yeah.
He fits right in with what this defense seems to play well when it comes to bad weather. It seems like Stephon Gilmore fits that pretty well. Like he's going to play well in the weather as well. So, all right, guys, let us know your thoughts on the Stephon Gilmore signing, what it means for this Colts defense. Do you agree with us? Is there other points that we didn't talk about regarding Stephon Gilmore, regarding the Colts and this marriage here for the next 2 years? Let us know in the comments below. That'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate all your support as always, guys. We are approaching 11K. We are less than 80 subscribers away. So if you're tuning into this video and you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button, help us reach our goal. Our goal is to reach that before draft day. We're less than 2 weeks away. We would love if you guys would help us out. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you, Derek. It's always a good time. As always, guys, go Colts.